So we'll kick off with our second talk of the evening. So Niall Murray is a lecturer in AIT, the Department of Electronics and Informatics. He teaches a wide range of subjects including software engineering and computer networks. And not only that, he tells me he was a gifted footballer, Gaelic footballer. I don't know, I'm sceptical of that. So I'll hand over to Niall now. Just to let you know, the Twitter handle is @TechTalksApp. So send in any comments or questions that you have on Twitter. So over to you, Niall.
Okay. Thanks very much for that. So, thank you very much for those kind, true words. So it's so nice to see so many familiar faces in the audience. I used to work in Ericsson in the early 2000s, and now I'm back in Athlone IT, and I see so many familiar faces. It's nice. It's a bit unusual when you're giving a talk like this. You recognise so many people, but we'll give it a rattle and see how we get on. So, as mentioned, I'm a lecturer in the Department of Electronics and Informatics in AIT. My primary research area is in this area called quality of experience, which matches nicely a little bit of what Rat talked about. What I try and work on is evaluating how users perceive the quality of multimedia experiences. And I do that across a number of different application domains. And the kind of context of the talk tonight is in this immersive multimedia experiences. So I try to be quite active in research. I'm involved in 8 postgraduate projects, kind of lead 5 of them. And I'm the social media editor for the special interest group on the multimedia. So most people who are here do the networks research, we're familiar with SIGCOM, or Special Interest Group on Communication. So SIG Multimedia is the equivalent of this. So that's kind of my background. And as I said, the kind of primary area of my work is in quality of experience. So nearly everybody here has kind of come from, the quality of service domain, whereby we kind of judge quality typically on technical metrics. So delay, loss, throughput, video codec. So the telecommunications community has come from this domain. There was another domain who worked on applications, the user experience domain, or HCI. So they had a completely different focus, which centered on how to make applications user-centric, right? So in the middle, we've had a kind of convergence, some from telecommunications, some from HCI, towards this area of quality of experience. So although quality of service implicitly infers user quality, the reality is we've all focused on delay, loss, jitter, codecs. We've kind of ignored the user. So our quality evaluation has stopped at the devices that Wraith has talked about. Where my focus is performing user evaluations to capture quality. So quality of experience is multidimensional, it's quite complex. We've kind of classified in 3 key areas: system factors, context factors, and human or user factors. So the system factors are most of the stuff that Ray referred to earlier. So delay, loss, throughput, screen type, so on and so forth, so forth. The user factors are myself and everybody here. Male, female, culture, visual acuity, past experiences. Level of expertise in a particular domain. These all influence how we would perceive quality of an application. The context factors are a bit, we'll say, Ray talked about watching a match. You'd have a higher quality experience watching a game with a few of your friends out here than maybe you would if you were sitting at home looking at it on your own. Just because of the context of the situation. So QoE is multidimensional, it's multifactorial, and it's even multisensory. Like as I'll get on to in a few moments. So why is it important to measure these metrics? So QoE is important because if you understand these factors, the factors that influence quality, then you understand quality. If you understand quality, you understand the factors that people will pay for. And this is the value add here. You understand the utility. So that brings us kind of to the definition of QoE. It's a degree of excitement, enjoyment, given the context, given the utility of an application or service. So that's the kind of context of my research area and the area I work in with some of my colleagues in Athlone, IT. So to kind of place this area of work across some application domains, I'm particularly interested in the applications of these immersive technologies in health, in education, and tourism. So what I have, when I envisioned this stage, it was a good bit bigger than this. So I had this notion of walking the whole way from the real world, where we're interacting with, like we are here, with all real content, into a completely multisensory virtual world. So what I'm going to do is talk about how we evaluate quality in the context of applications using this technology. Okay? So Ray talked, well, actually it was a discussion we had before he gave his presentation about QoE and QoE in the Ericsson world. And I was delighted to hear, that there's a TV base in Ireland. It might be the scope of some future collaborations in this area. We measure quality primarily in two broad domains. One is with post-experience reporting of a multimedia content. So I sit down, I'm viewing some content, whether it's on a head-mounted display or a screen, and I fill out a questionnaire with rating scales indicating, this particular experience was very realistic, I felt present in the environment, all these kind of questions, right? And there's rating scales for this, which are called MOS, or Mean Opinion Score. So this has been the traditional way us as a community and much of the HCI community have worked to evaluate quality. But there's challenges with this. Writing valid questionnaires is actually really complex, which sounds a bit strange, but it's really difficult to do it well. I've done so many studies where you capture data on large samples and you go, wish I'd asked that, which is really frustrating, okay? Also, in terms of the design of questionnaires, and this kind of comes from the psychology domain, it's very easy to have positive bias in your questionnaires, okay? Another issue is non-uniform distribution of results. So based on your experience, you have some rating of quality for a particular environment. Based on your experience, you have something completely different. So we have kind of graphs like this that are non-uniform representing quality. But the biggest issue is these kind of ITUT standards for evaluating quality are primarily post the experience. Okay? So we talk about Gaelic football match. Yeah. Roscommon man. Haven't had a lot of success in recent years. Hopefully Kevin McStay will sort this out, right? Even though I know there's Mayo and Galway people in this audience, but we won't say anything there. But if you're watching a match, you have a really high quality experience and you're delighted with the entertainment of it, up to a particular point, Mayo get a goal at the last minute, and my reporting on that experience is, no, I didn't enjoy that. Right? So the point is that something that could happen at a particular point throughout the entire experience can influence my entire reporting of the whole experience. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is how we've done these studies, through subjective tests. What I'm more interested in now is trying to understand QoE through the use of physiological or psychophysiological metrics. So most of us wear these kind of devices now, Fitbit, measuring heart rate. Or different sensors, like this one I've had in my hand throughout this talk. It's a biosensor from a spin-out company from Trinity, which measures electrodermal activity, which is an indicator of excitement, right? There was a previous joke about this earlier. I won't even go there, right? Okay. So a lot of the research that we do now is to try to find correlations between these physiological metrics and the user QoE, user quality of experience. What's the benefits of this? Well, as a user, I'm given data on this and I don't even realize it. We could go down the route of the EEG, these, with all these probes measuring neural activity, but this has a a negative effect on the ecological validity of the data. I have this on, I don't even realize I'm giving data back. Even this, most people probably didn't realize I was carrying it. You know, so this is the kind of domain I'm trying to work towards in terms of getting objective metrics that reflect quality throughout a multimedia experience. So in that context, what I'm going to do is kind of give a little bit of an overview on some of the applications that, application domains that I'm applying this technology in, and how we evaluate quality in it, right? So as we talk about this scale here, we have real world and we have the completely virtual multisensory experience, okay? So this device here, I hope I don't wreck the mic picking this up. This device here is the HoloLens, which is an augmented reality application, okay? So as we look along this scale, the further we go to the right here, the more simulated content that's presented to the user, okay? So if I put this on, without trying to look too much of a dork, even though my head is a bit big, okay? So I'm wearing this device here now, okay? I'm still actually actively engaged with you guys in the real world, even though it's possible to be presented with overlaid content on extra information on you guys, okay? This is AR. So I'm in the real world, but I'm getting extra content given the context, okay? So one of the guys I'm working with here is Connor here. So Connor, stand up there for a second. Oh, come on, let's go. So Connor is working on a, yeah, that was a poor effort. Connor is working on a really, really nice project, and he actually got the best paper at the 9th International Conference, IEEE Conference on Quality Multimedia Experience in Erfurt in Germany last week. So Connor's area of application of this technology in speech and language. Okay, so there's two broad categories in speech and language therapy. So my wife is a speech and language therapy. This is why I know something about this. There's expressive language, which I'm trying to do here now. You know, how I actually express, pronounce words and so on and so forth. And then there's receptive language. So this is how we understand language. You know, so thankfully, I guess most of us here, you know, would be classified as typically developing people. You know, maybe or maybe not, I don't know. But you know, for some people who are less fortunate, particularly someone who might have, you know, suffered a traumatic brain injury, the associations between language, words, and their meaning, and how we process this, it doesn't happen as naturally as it happens for us, right? So what Connor is working on is trying to develop applications using AR technology to help with the assessment of this condition. So one particular condition is called aphasia, where you have this issue with the association between words and their meaning and this kind of thing, right? So it can occur when people who have a stroke or this, unfortunate things like this. So what's the benefit of this? In clinical settings, speech and language therapists use paper-based assessments for this. Paper isn't the de facto way we engage with information anymore. The medium we use is digital, okay? In addition, you know, paper is not too engaging. So if we use technology like this, automatically it engages the user in terms of their interaction and associations between different words. So to give an example of one of the pieces of work that Connor has done, he's recreated an aphasia test called, comprehensive aphasia test called CAT. So in this, you associate particular images and meanings. So you might be given a picture of a monkey in the middle, which is the categorical item. And there's a number of different items that may or may not have an association with this. So you might have a banana, an apple, or not, even apple's not a good example, a banana, a bike, a car, and a lorry. So the association is between the monkey and the banana, obviously, right? This seems really obvious to us, but it's not for people who suffer traumatic brain injury. So the interesting thing about applications of this technology is that we're still in the real world when we're using it, so we can still engage with a speech and language therapist. But, and this is what's really exciting, is that we can get objective metrics on the user performance, which speech and language therapists can't provide. They can say, I think that was, I'm not trying to do my wife out of a job here, right? Just so we're clear. I think that was a little bit longer than it should have been. But there's no normative data for this. There's normative results for terms of how many right answers we get. but there's no normative data in terms of the interaction times. So this is kind of where we're going with this example, which I think is really nice, and he's doing really well on this. So another area I'm particularly interested in is this idea of the wearable IoT. So I'm involved in a Horizon 2020 cost action. It's part of one of the management committees, and it's about to do with kind of wearable robots or wearable IoT, right? So I don't think he's here, but the kind of application domain here is, again, in health, is to do with patient recovery from total hip replacement surgery. So I work with Owen Sheehan in Tullamore Hospital, who's an expert in this orthopedic surgery, specialises in this hip replacement, right? And there's a big debate in the community, in the surgeon community, about which is best post-op in terms of patient recovery. Now, we'd assume that the minimally invasive approach is better, but there's disagreement in the community, in their community, on this, right? So what one of my colleagues is working on is trying to build a wearable IoT ecosystem that can measure in an ecologically valid way users' gait. So we'll capture the gait. So gait is about human movement, right? We'll capture gait post the operation, pre the operation, post the operation, and we'll do different groups and compare to see, again, objective data to see which is the best. Because, you know, when I used to play football, I spent an awful lot of my time injured, right? I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because I was so good. Yeah, people were trying to take me out the whole time. But so you go to the physio or doctor, right? You're asked to walk, or you do your driving test. Who does this? Who does their driving test or walk when they go to a doctor like they normally would? You have a particular posture normally, but for some reason, I don't know if it's what it is, we kind of behave in a particular way when we're being assessed. So the idea of this system is you're wearing these sensors all of the time, getting this ecologically valid data, which can inform then the surgeons in terms of the best approach to use. That makes sense? So the next one is, I didn't have any wearable sensors really, so, and you wouldn't want to know where I placed them, so it's better without them. So this is head-mounted display from a company called Oculus, right? So as you can see, we're moving across in terms of the spectrum of digital content presentation. So I don't know how this is going to look, but I'm going to try this anyway. So if I'm consuming content in this, I am no longer engaging from a visual perspective in the world that you're in. From a visual point of view, I'm in a completely different world. Okay? So one of the applications that we're looking on here is to do with kids with ASD in terms of how we can develop social and communication skills. And again, the objective metrics we're capturing here is head movement, eye gaze, posture, because these are all non-verbal ways we communicate. So I think I'm really interested in this as well. But the last one, on a lighter note, is we include this and this. Okay? I hope the mic is okay there. So now I'm in a completely simulated environment visually, but I'm also getting olfactory cues from that virtual environment. So this is an area of work I've been trying to, it's a kind of a pet hobby of mine, I've been trying to develop nationally since I was working on my PhD a couple of years ago. But in this scenario, one of my students, and I think a number of people here have done the test for us on this. What he did was he modelled Athlone Castle in the town centre there. So he completely modelled Athlone Castle, right? So we have the visual. So you're taken on a virtual Segway. He also built a nice rig where you stand, and you actually think or it feels like you're on a real Segway. So we're getting visual content from the head-mounted display, olfactory to sense of smell, the olfactory display, and under the board of the virtual Segway, we have this kind of haptic effect. So when you're moving around the castle, you're getting the haptic sensation, olfactory, and obviously the visual. So the idea of this study, or the initial study on this, was to understand how each of these different aspects contribute to, or not, quality of experience. So does the addition of olfaction in a virtual tourism experience contribute to QoE? Does haptic contribute to QoE? And we also went a little bit further to try and move in not just tourism, but a kind of an infotainment. So does the presentation of olfactory data result in a better information recall on that environment? Does the presentation of haptic result in better information recall on that environment? You know, so we're just about to publish some of the results on this. Quite interesting. It seems that users prefer haptic than olfaction. Someone could make a very funny joke on this, right? It also seems that neither haptic nor olfaction contribute to information recall, which is really unusual because if you think about all the studies from the psychology domain, like there's a theory called Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, which states, you know, multisensory information results in better information recall than unisensory. All right? So what I'm kind of hypothesizing here is that the reason for that is because of a lack of interaction. So they were brought around on a predefined path to a virtual Athlone castle, but they weren't allowed to interact with particular pieces of the content, which is the next step in the study of this. Okay? So how are we doing on time? We're okay, yeah? I was told to keep going as long as I can, so that's their fault, right? Another area, maybe it's a kind of a topic for another talk, but I'm also applications of these kind of technologies in the Industry 4.0 kind of smart manufacturing domain. So we'll have the AR for interaction with this environment and the VR for training in this environment. Maybe that's an aspect for another night. So that kind of summarizes some of the topics that I work on. I do a little bit on the multimedia delivery as well, but the common theme across all of these aspects is QoE. That's what I'm interested in. And in particular, QoE in the health applications. I think this is a really interesting area for all of us, and I might conclude on that point. With an eye to the future, where do I think this is going, this kind of area? Because I've been kind of interested in this for quite a long time. So what I think we'll see is miniaturization of this technology, there's no doubt. Even within each of these groups, there's significant differences in the different types of hardware. You know, because it's kind of a fragmented approach. I guess motivated by, you know, different application domains. So there's a really powerful headset from a company called Dacry. They have an office in Dublin. They're a US AR company. And I've experienced this, like the quality of the rendering in that device is unbelievable. And it's focused on kind of the construction industry and this kind of thing. And then there's say the HoloLens here. And then we have, over here we have the Oculus, the HTC Vive. There's a whole suite of different products in this domain. But what I see happening in the, you know, kind of medium term in this is a significant miniaturization of this technology. And from the wearable sensors perspective, like, I kind of sometimes, I don't really like saying this because I think it, but it's going to sound a little bit, you'll have, you know, this ability to augment extra information in things like contact lenses, or even embedded onto the body. You know, there's a brilliant book from a guy called Peter Vida, he's a Swedish researcher. It's called Artificial Human Sensors, right? And we don't really notice this. I mentioned this when we were talking before. You don't really notice this when you're kind of in Athlone. You notice a little bit more in Dublin maybe. But like if you go to somewhere like Germany, or you go to Canada, or you go to the United States, you know, it really hits you the Asian population problem that's going to be. You know, so this idea of the requirement for artificial human sensors going forward, which will be, in my mind, connected to the network, you know, it's going to be huge. You know, we already do it a little bit with the auditory and visual, but we'll definitely have, you know, augmented taste devices, augmented, you know, smell devices, and so on and so forth. Which kind of brings me back to the point I was just about to finish on. You know, my area is QoE, and in the next 10 years, I kind of visualize applications of these technologies towards QOL, which kind of touches on the wearable sensors. And this is such an important area for everybody in this room. You know, people who work in quality of life applications, whether they work in networks, whether they work in big data, whether they work in analytics, whether they work in multimedia, or even I was going to say in the gaming. There's massive opportunities or massive requirements for further work in this area across all the spectrum of the people in this room. So I don't think there was anything else I was going to talk about. I think I've enough, have I? Yeah. Or have you enough? That's it. Thanks very much.
Really nice. Well done. Very interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
Any questions from the room? We have a question down there. Actually, I have a question, Niall. What's your heart rate now in the Fitbit?
Yeah.
What about now?
Well, it's either one or two things. Okay, we'll go down
Do
here.
you want the excitement?
I think
I'm messing.
have we a question in the back?
Question there in the back.
Now, just wondering, of all the situations that you've measured QOE for, which was the most unusual?
Unusual. Well, there would have been a time, I have a different perspective now, you see. You know what I mean? I was involved in a study at a conference one time where they had a headset like this, and they sprayed a particular taste on a biscuit to make it taste like an orange. And they were trying to do a study on, the influence of the visual versus the taste and the conflict there. This was a pretty unusual, which was kind of quite invasive at the time, but things are kind of, a few years ago I would have said that was crazy, but now when I see what's actually going on across different labs across the world, like it's, I'm not as easily shocked. Yeah, this kind of thing, yeah. Here comes trouble now.
Hi, Niall.
Robin.
Myself and Niall have never met. Just a question on quality of experience, actually. I actually learned a lot about it from you, and on that. Is quality of experience being held back by the current internet, or can it continue to evolve within the confines of the current internet, or will there have to be an evolution before quality of experience, like a higher level of it, can be delivered?
Well, the internet, facilitates capture of QoE in one way, right? Because it facilitates having all these sensors. When I think about the term QoE and the definition of it, there still isn't a concrete framework for how we can actually capture it. This doesn't exist yet. I'm trying to define physiological metrics as a way to infer QoE, but there isn't a concrete framework for this. And I think it's the opposite. The internet will make this possible. Even going back to what Raytha talked about, the amount of data that these guys have, I'd love it. In the multimedia space. The amount of information, because I hear talks from Google, YouTube, was Google now. So I hear talks from YouTube, and the data they're getting and they're extracting is really powerful in terms of what factors and context from the user and system perspective influence QoE. So I think it's the opposite. I think the internet will facilitate QoE capture, yeah. Yeah.
Just a question there, Niall. Just to go back to your analogy about watching the game of football and Mayo scores the goal in the last second.
Yeah.
But on a serious point, when you go to objectively measure the experience throughout the whole experience, rather than just is there a risk that, like, if I go to the match and my team loses with the last goal, I might have enjoyed the first 69 minutes, but on the 17th minute I'm pissed. So
yeah.
I didn't enjoy the experience. But as the end user, actually, if you have a metric telling me I was really enjoying it up until that bit, I don't care about that. I really didn't enjoy the experience anyway. So is there a risk that the science, if you like, overrules the actual human subjective thing, which is the customer opinion at the end of the day?
Yeah, there is a risk there. And this is why this is so complex. And this is why the context, so the three factors, system, human, context. Context is really difficult. Because it's something like this. Like, the context of my experience of something can switch based on 20 years, something happened 20 years ago. This is really difficult to try and model this, for sure. This is why, even though I'm pushing for this physiological approach, there will always be space, I think, in this area for the qualitative. Yeah.
Have you ever seen Black Mirror?
No.
Okay, it's probably about 5 or 6 years old now, but it's a series on Channel 4, and it's based around technology and how advances in technology can sometimes have very negative side effects.
Yeah.
And as you talk there about the contact lens, you reminded me of an episode which features this chap who has a power to recall memories, and it goes in a very, very bad way. So I just wonder, do you think sometimes, Niall, about the negative connotations about what you're doing? I mean, there's some very, very powerful arguments for it, but what about the moral side effects?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if we're capturing this data, you know, if we're capturing this kind of data, it can, if it's not managed properly, it can be completely abused. You know, so say I'm wearing the Fitbit there or this kind of thing, and I'm working in some particular industry, and you know, CEO is getting this data saying something going on with that guy. You know, there's potential for abuse of it completely there. Yeah, you know, but I think you can say this about most areas of technology now because it's so part of us. You know.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you a question. If you had to put all your money on either VR or AR, which would you pick? Because a lot of the big companies, say Google, Apple. I mean, Apple have come out recently and said they're big into AR.
Yeah.
And obviously Facebook and stuff are big into VR with Oculus Rift. Even for your own research, or just if you had to look, say, 5 years, 10 years out, which do you think is going to be the most transformative kind of technology?
Well, the first thing I'd say about that is they're completely different technologies. Although they're on a similar spectrum, interaction with the real world, you know, facilitates development of applications, you know, in the context of actually doing something in the real world. I think the scope of what will happen in VR will be around this kind of social aspect, which is why I guess the Facebook have purchased this, but primarily in training as well. You know, this is where training and education. This is where a lot of the development in over the next couple of years will be. If I was to say which has a better chance, who asked this question? Sorry, which has the better chance? I think AR has. Right? Why? Because it's less expensive. Yeah.
Hi, Niall.
Hey, Austin, yeah.
This is real trouble
This
here.
is my boss, so this is real trouble, yeah.
No, I was just wondering, is it being perhaps overcomplicated, the whole quality of experience? If people return to an experience again and again, that's the ultimate measure of they enjoyed the experience. And yet at the same time, if you return to something that's out of habit, perhaps, like, you know, God love them, the Mayo football supporters, or whatever. They don't enjoy it, but they keep going back for more. But what I'm saying is, don't you have to have a sort of habit of experience to understand the quality of experience? And then I was asking myself, as you were explaining it, perhaps these people are trying to gauge a quality of experience before a habit has been formed in order for a market segmentation perspective and selling perspective. And is it the cart before the horse, and can you really do it at all?
Well, I don't know. I'm just working on this kind of area. But like, I think you hit the nail on the head there. This is the kind of key difference between the UX or HCI community and where this quality of experience community have come from. The quality experience community are, okay, so we have the delight, you know, enjoyment, but the utility. This is the key thing from this aspect, because a lot of us have come from kind of telecoms domain. So what's the utility, or what are the factors that influence the utility? This is the thing, but for sure, that's debatable enough. You can buy me a drink later on, we'll discuss that.
We'll take one more question, Jason.
How's it going?
How you doing?
I'm a gamer, so VR and more VR. Very excited about VR.
Right.
But one of the games...
So you're very disappointed to get me then instead of the right? Yeah.
No, I came for the VR. One of the games I used to play, I don't play it anymore, I've been clean for years, is World of Warcraft. And one of a big problem with World of Warcraft is people get addicted to it. They play it, 24 hours a day, and some people have passed away literally playing the game. So as VR technology evolves, is VR addiction something that you're worried about, and is there a line that's talked about that kind of you've decided that you won't cross?
Yeah, I think technology addiction is something we should all be thinking about. she'll kill me for saying this, but I've had more rows with my wife over being on WhatsApp talking to my friends than when we're trying to communicate, because like that's actually we talk about VR and all these immersive experiences, but if I'm on this, you know, there's people doing it probably in this room right now. You know, if I'm on this and I'm having a communication session with someone outside of here, you know, I'm not. Where am I? I'm not in this environment. I'm engaged in a different environment with different people. You know what I mean?
That could be because it's more crack.
Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, that's QOE for you. Yeah.
The banter could go on here now for a while.
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap it there, guys. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks a million, Niall. Well done.